Maria Shilaos and Taun Beddes with you from the KSL Greenhouse show. You can hear us Saturday mornings 8 to 11 on KSL News Radio. We're all getting excited about starting to plant, but it's too early to plant. So we want to talk about starting seedlings indoors. So Taun, let's begin. First of all, how early is too early to start them indoors?
It depends on what you're doing outside. And so normally mid-March is when you can start putting cool season crops, broccoli, cabbage, lettuce outside between then and about early April. If you want to get it out sooner, you can do that, but you'll need to get things like walls of water or little greenhouses or little tents for the plants to warm them up. And so what I like to do is look at the seed pack or a fact sheet, and it'll say, so like 4 weeks before last frost, or 8 weeks before last frost. It'll tell you kind of when to put them in. And that's a good guide, but there's lots of fact sheets out there that it'll tell you how soon to put it in.
Okay, so let's get us started on the right foot. First of all, what kind of soil should we use? I was in the store today. They're marked so many different ways. They say organic, they say natural.
Natural doesn't mean anything. Legally, there's no legal definition of natural. And it just is a marketing thing usually to say, look at us, we've sourced everything from the earth. But there's no restrictions on them putting, it's not that they would, but things that you may not consider from the earth, I guess is the best way to put it. And so if you're truly looking for, I won't call it safer, but if you want something that has had a little bit more care put into it, and there's no risk of, or very little risk of any residual insecticides or anything, then you want to look for organic. And I don't know if we can see on this, but it says OMRI listed. And that's an agency that will certify different companies and make sure they're following standards, so that if it says OMRI certified, then it hasn't been exposed to any pesticides or insecticides, and they followed organic standards to actually make the soil.
Okay, the next thing we need are good seeds. Okay, we can take seeds from our own yards from the previous year, but what's a good seed? How are we going to be the most successful at this?
If you show up to a garden center about now, they're fully stocked on seeds, and by law they have to test what the germination rate is on that seed, and so it's going to be fresh. If you save your seeds, you'll want to download some fact sheets, because some seed you can only save for a year or two, and other seed up to 5 or 10 years. And so it really just depends on the particular species. But if you buy your seeds every year or just use them within a couple of years, you're usually fine.
Okay, so I picked my seeds, I've picked my soil, and now I've got to decide, oh my goodness, what am I going to plant these in? So how do I decide? I mean, there are so many different choices. How do I decide if I want to choose a small container, or if I want to choose something a little larger, or there are all of these other choices as well? Talk about what we've got here.
Well, we've got several options, and this right here, we filled it with what's called seed mix or seedling mix. And the reason we've done that is it's ground a little bit more finely, and it's easier to put seeds into. And so I specifically use that. But something like this is nice if you just have a 10 by 10 garden spot and you only want to start 6 or 8 tomatoes and 6 or 8 peppers. You can do just a few of these, and it's nice, it's inexpensive, and they're easy to handle. Some of these over here, like this tray with these peat pellets in there, are nice because it's the same idea. It's small, these expand out, and these will go a little bit farther. The peat pellets, you soak them in water and they expand, and you just put your seed in the top where that little hole is, and then set it back in the tray, and you can water these, and they're fine. These can be a little bit, I won't call them messier. Some people prefer these, some people prefer the soil, and both are fine.
So are these biodegradable? You put the whole thing in the soil?
Yes, and you can just set that. When the advantage to them is when you plant them, is you just dig your little hole and set it right in the soil, and you're done. This over here is a little bit more industrial, or for the serious hobbyist. And so this would be for somebody setting out 20 or 30 tomatoes or 60. And this is actually a seed tray. And the advantage to using these instead of, say, something like a set pony pack is you put your seeds in here and let them germinate. Invariably, you have about 10 or 15 or 20% that don't germinate, and you let these root out in these little cells and then transfer them to a bigger tray or a bigger insert later. And so you have complete pony packs. And so if somebody that really does a lot of seeds, these are handy.
Okay, so when would we want to use a larger pot? Say something like this. Will it keep
If
us
you're
from
doing
transplanting?
cuttings, for seeds and things, I don't personally like to start seeds in those. Usually you can, especially if you were doing something like alyssum or where you had more of a bunch of little plants together. Those are fine, but I prefer to start them in here because if your seeds don't germinate for some reason, you've wasted a lot less soil, and you can move it over after they've come up and rooted out. You can move 2 or 3 of them into a bigger pot.
Okay, when will we use something like this, these little jiffy pots?
These are nice. If you have something that is like a squash or melons, bigger plants, you can sometimes seed directly into something like this or even bigger. And so those pots over there might be actually useful for zucchinis and pumpkins. And because those larger, more aggressive plants will root more deeply, more quickly, and they're a little happier in a container like this as compared to these little cells over here.
Okay, and then are these are biodegradable too?
They
you can
are.
Put these right in the soil.
So what I like to do with them, just to make sure that the roots can escape when you're ready to plant, is I like to take a knife and score just to the right to the inside on 2 or 3 sides when I set it in the ground, because the roots will push out the side and this will degrade within a few weeks.
All right. So now how do we plant our seeds?
So on planting seeds, what we've previously done,
I mean, it sounds easy, but
yeah,
how
we
deep
filled
do
the
we
tray
plant
up
them?
right here. And what we've done is when you put the soil in, you actually need to gently tamp it because the soil will settle. And then after you get it to the top of the tray and you water, it sinks and compresses a little bit, but that's okay. And so we're going to just, they're easier to handle, do some bright light Swiss chard.
I love Swiss chard, my favorite.
So we look at the back and it says on our planting depth about a 1/2 inch.
Okay.
And so instead of trying to shove my finger in there, what I'm going to do, and you can actually use a stick that's sharpened a little bit. This, if you're using a stick, is actually called a dibble in the industry. So if you go in and talk to people like, yeah, I've got a dibble.
Sound like you know
yeah,
what
you sound like you're in the know. And I'll put about a 1/2 inch hole in every one of these, and it doesn't need to be perfect. And so I'll just go ahead and put my holes in there. Now, if you have really small seed, you don't want to do this because it'll go too deep. And then I'll open my seed pack up, and I try to maybe put a few into a larger container, so to try to just directly dump them out. Then I'll take them and just drop them in the hole. It doesn't really, there's no upside down or right side up on these.
Now, are you putting 1 or 2?
1 or 2. I mean, it's Swiss chard.
Seems like a waste when you're putting 2 in there.
Yeah, the seeds on these especially, it's inexpensive enough that if you wanted to put a couple in there, 2 or 3,
just to make sure
one's going to come up. Now, what I'm going to do is get some potting soil, and just a handful. Maybe we could use a little cup over here. And instead of trying to just tease it over, I'm just going to put a little down and recover those. And you know, these are larger seed. Wipe it off a bit, and then get our watering can, and I'll hold this off the table to keep it a little cleaner.
Okay, now isn't that going to wash them away?
We're going to be really careful. They're larger seed, and so I'm
For
not.
the smaller seed, you would not want to
No,
do
you
that.
wouldn't. And so I'm not blowing the seed out, but that's all I want to do, and I want that water to settle. And if you have smaller seed, you know, say you're doing little pepper seeds or little tomato seeds, you would just use a water bottle. We'll open that up a little and just use it to wet the soil until it's completely wet. And then before those seeds germinate, you actually use a water bottle a couple times a day to moisten that. And then we've got our peat pot pellets in here. I'll set those aside. Dump this out.
So we need to keep the seeds wet, though.
We
until
do.
Until they germinate, right?
So we're going to cover it, and this is a little kit. And I've seen these anywhere from Walmart to the dollar store to local farm stores. They're very available on Amazon. And what this does is it keeps the water in there and keeps the seeds at near 100% humidity. These will have a tendency, if you use these, to dry around the sides. And so you may need to re-moisten this a couple of times a day. But as soon as you start to see that seed pop up, you've got to take this off because once that seed's up, it'll induce a lot of fungal diseases you don't want.
Okay.
So that has to come off when the seed starts germinating.
Plants have to have light.
They do.
Okay, you have a heat mat here to keep them warm. What temperature? So you can't just put these in the basement where it's going to be too cool. You have a heat mat here.
I do.
Tell me how that works.
So the heat mat will usually heat up about 20 to 30 degrees above room temperature. Mike Karen loaned me a thermometer here that makes them a little bit even more user-friendly, so you know the temperature you plug it into. But especially if you're growing seeds in an unheated room and you're trying to do tomatoes, peppers, melons, you have to use one of these because it heats the soil up and keeps your plants warm. If you don't have a heated room, you know, the coldest room you'd want to do is about 55 or 60 degrees in the first place. But unless it's warmer, especially for warm season crops, you do need to use a heat mat.
Okay, now they have to have light. So if you are putting them somewhere like a basement or somewhere that doesn't have a light source, you want to use a light, something like this.
So this
simple shop light.
You can let it. You don't need to turn it on usually until your stuff starts to germinate. There's a few things like petunias you may need to, so you want to read your instructions. But when things start to germinate,
not until they pop up then, right?
It depends. You can leave it on, and it'll provide a little bit of heat.
Warmth. Okay.
But with a lot of things, it's not absolutely necessary. You still don't want them in pitch black.
Okay.
So you want to keep this about 6 inches above your trays.
This is where I made my mistake when I first started trying to do this as a hobby. I thought, oh, I'll keep them way up here. No.
No, you lose energy exponentially for every inch away you are from the plants.
Okay.
And about 6 inches above the tops are usually just fine, so you don't scorch them if they're getting enough energy over a long period of time.
But then you have to keep a close eye on them because they're going to grow fairly quickly.
You do, and because the light isn't quite even, you want to rotate your trays a little bit, make sure they're watered, and then you want to put some chains or something on this so that as the plants grow, that you can just raise it up as they grow higher.
Okay, and they do have little things for the chains.
Yes, this actually comes with chains. You can build an inexpensive PVC or wooden frame or hang them from a shelf or something.
Okay. So now each plant is different. How long can somebody expect from the time they plant their seed to the time it germinates and then to the time it's actually ready to go outside?
Well, it really varies according to species because the squash and watermelons and pumpkins, about 2 weeks. But tomatoes, about 6 weeks. Petunias might take from January until May. Okay. And so it just really is species dependent. You have to do your research because one of the biggest mistakes, besides maybe planting too much, is we plant too early, and then what do you do with a tomato in mid-April if you don't have walls of water? Because if you leave it in a little cell like this, it'll get overgrown and really unhealthy, and so you'll have to transplant it to a bigger pot. And so it's easier to use that timing, and you're actually better off usually planting something a little bit too small than a little bit too big.
Okay, what about fertilizer? Do we need to worry about that?
Initially, no. When that seed starts to germinate, within a week or so, you can get some houseplant fertilizer, just the stuff you mix into a liquid, and use it half strength or quarter strength. And it depends on how fast your plants are growing and how fast you want to push them. Quarter strength if you just want them to grow healthy but a little slower, half strength, and you'd only use it about once a week either way if you want them to grow a little faster.
Okay, I want to know, what is the key to success?
Bright light and not drowning the plants once they're germinated. People have a tendency to water way too much because that soil needs to be saturated all the time when they're seeds, but as soon as they germinate, you actually want that soil to dry out moderately between irrigations because the roots need oxygen. And if this soil is constantly wet, it will be saturated, there's no oxygen, you rot the roots, and there's a lot of fungal diseases that will kill your plants. A general term for the fungal diseases is called damping off, and it just all of a sudden the plants will turn yellow, the stem turns brown, and they die.
All right, so happy growing. For more tips like these, make sure you tune in on Saturday mornings 8 to 11 for the Greenhouse Show on KSL News Radio. And we're on podcast, so you can find us on the KSL News Radio app. You can actually listen on the KSL News Radio app right on your phone. Thanks for being with us.